I was sitting on my front porch in Scottsdale, Arizona, watching my 8-year-old daughter pour pink lemonade into plastic cups when Sharon Winters from the HOA marched up my driveway with a clipboard clutched to her chest, like it was the Declaration of Independence itself. The temperature had hit 95 degrees by noon that Saturday in June, and my daughter Emma had spent the entire morning setting up her little folding table with hand-painted signs advertising Emma's fresh lemonade 50 cents. The kid had even made cookies with her mom before the divorce, back when things were simpler. Now it was just the two of us in this cookie-cutter subdivision called Desert Bloom Estates, and I was doing my best to keep her childhood magical despite everything falling apart around us. Sharon's heels clicked against the concrete, each step deliberate and aggressive. She was maybe 50 years old, with that specific haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager," and a white visor that matched her tennis outfit despite the fact that I had never once seen her near the community tennis courts. "Excuse me, Mr. Xander Xavier," she said, pronouncing my full name like she was reading me my Miranda rights. "I need to speak with you about this unauthorized commercial activity happening on your property." I stood up from my lawn chair, confused. "You mean my daughter's lemonade stand?" "This is a clear violation of Desert Bloom Estates Homeowner Association Code Section 12.4, which explicitly prohibits any business operations within residential properties without prior written approval from the board." She thrust a piece of paper at me, which I noticed had been printed out maybe 5 minutes ago based on how warm it still felt. Emma looked up from her stand, her face falling. She had made $17 so far, mostly from our neighbor Mrs. Peterson, who had stopped by 3 times and insisted on paying $5 each visit. The old woman knew Emma was saving up for a new bicycle after her old one got stolen from our garage last month. "Sharon, she's 8 years old selling lemonade. This isn't a business. The exchange of goods for monetary compensation is, by definition, a business transaction." Sharon pulled out her phone and took several photos of the stand, making sure to get close-ups of the cash box and the handwritten signs. "I'm documenting this violation. You have 30 minutes to cease operations, or I will be forced to issue a formal fine of $500 per day until compliance is achieved." My jaw dropped. $500? Are you serious right now? The HOA covenants are very clear, Mr. Xavier. Every homeowner signed these agreements when they purchased their property. Ignorance is not an excuse. She glanced at Emma with what I can only describe as complete indifference, like my daughter was just another violation to be documented and filed away. "Dad." Emma's voice was small, uncertain. She had been so excited this morning, talking about how she was going to buy that blue bicycle with the white basket. She had even picked out a name for it. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, though I could feel my blood pressure rising. "Mrs. Winters is just doing her job." The words tasted bitter coming out, but I did not want Emma to see me lose my temper. Sharon checked her watch, an expensive gold thing that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. 29 minutes now. I suggest you start packing up." She turned on her heel and walked back toward her house 3 doors down, the one with the perfectly manicured lawn that looked like it had been trimmed with nail scissors. I helped Emma pack up her stand, watching her carefully stack the cups and pour the remaining lemonade back into the pitcher. She did not cry, which somehow made it worse. She just moved quietly, methodically, like she was used to disappointment. That broke my heart more than any tantrum could have. "I'm sorry, baby," I said as we carried everything back inside our garage. "It's okay," she replied, but her voice said otherwise. Maybe I did not need a new bike anyway. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a beer and read through the entire HOA covenant document. It was 73 pages of the most bureaucratic, petty nonsense I had ever encountered. There were rules about what color you could paint your mailbox, how tall your grass could be measured to the eighth of an inch, what types of plants were acceptable in front yards versus backyards, and indeed, buried in Section 12.4, a prohibition on home-based business operations. But here is what got me. There was an exception clause. Section 12.4.b stated that neighborhood-enhancing temporary activities that promote community spirit could be approved by a simple majority vote of the HOA board, which consisted of 5 members. I had never paid much attention to HOA politics before, but I knew Sharon was the president, and I recognized 3 other names on the board roster. Marcus Chen, who lived 2 streets over, Patricia Donnelly, a retiree who was always gossiping at the mailboxes, and 2 other people I had never met. I spent Sunday researching. I found out that HOA board meetings were held on the first Tuesday of every month and were open to all residents. The next meeting was in 2 days. I also discovered something interesting. Arizona state law actually had provisions protecting children's lemonade stands. In 2018, the state had passed legislation specifically preventing cities and HOAs from banning kids from operating lemonade stands on their own property or in public parks. It was called the Lemonade Stand Law and had been created after several high-profile cases of kids being shut down. Monday morning, I called the local news station, Channel 7 News Arizona. I got transferred around a few times before ending up with a woman named Jessica who worked in their consumer advocacy segment called On Your Side. "Let me get this straight," Jessica said after I explained the situation. "Your HOA threatened to fine you $500 a day because your 8-year-old daughter was selling lemonade." "That's exactly what happened," I confirmed. "And I think they are actually violating state law by doing it. Can you send me photos of the stand and a copy of the HOA's threat?" I sent her everything I had, including screenshots of the relevant Arizona statutes. She called me back within an hour. "We want to do this story," she said. "This is exactly the kind of thing our viewers care about. Can we come by tomorrow afternoon, maybe set up the lemonade stand again and film it?" My first instinct was to protect Emma from media attention. But then I thought about how excited she had been, how carefully she had painted those signs, how she had practiced making the perfect lemonade recipe. I thought about Sharon's cold indifference, the way she had photographed my daughter's little stand like it was a crime scene. "Yes," I said, "let's do it." Tuesday afternoon, Emma set up her lemonade stand again. This time, a news van was parked in front of our house, and a reporter named David Chen was asking Emma questions while a cameraman filmed everything. Emma was nervous at first, but David was great with her, asking about her favorite flavor of lemonade and why she wanted to buy a bicycle. "I like riding bikes because it makes me feel free," Emma said, her voice getting stronger as she talked. "And my old one got stolen, so I have been walking everywhere. My friend Sophia lives 6 blocks away and it takes forever to walk there." Sharon appeared within 10 minutes, marching down the street with her clipboard. This time, she had backup. A balding man in khaki shorts who I recognized as Marcus Chen from the HOA board, though he was no relation to the reporter. "Mr. Xavier, I warned you about this violation," Sharon said, then noticed the cameras. Her expression shifted from righteous anger to something resembling panic. "What is this?" "Hi, I'm David Chen with Channel 7 News," the reporter said, stepping forward with his microphone. "We are doing a story about HOA regulations and children's lemonade stands. Would you like to comment?" Sharon's face flushed red. This is a private community matter. You need to leave immediately." "Actually, we are on public property," David said, gesturing to the sidewalk where they were standing. "And Mr. Xavier has given us permission to be here. Can you explain why the HOA is threatening to fine a family $500 a day over a child's lemonade stand?" "This is not about a lemonade stand," Sharon said, her voice rising. "This is about maintaining property values and ensuring that our community standards are upheld. If we allow one person to violate the covenants, then everyone will think they can do whatever they want." "Are you aware that Arizona law specifically protects children's lemonade stands?" David asked, pulling out a printed copy of the statute. Sharon snatched the paper from his hand and scanned it quickly. I watched her face go from red to pale as she read. Marcus Chen, the HOA board member, leaned over to look at it too, and I saw him physically step back from Sharon. "This law is about public property," Sharon said finally, though her voice had lost its certainty. "It does not apply to private communities with HOA regulations." "Actually, it does," I said, stepping forward. I had done my homework. "The law specifically states that HOAs cannot prohibit lemonade stands operated by minors on property owned by the minor's legal guardian. I own this house, and Emma is my daughter. You are violating state law." The camera was capturing everything. Sharon looked between me, the reporter, and Marcus, who was now actively backing away down the sidewalk. "The board will review this matter," Sharon said stiffly, "but the temporary cease and desist order stands until we have conducted a proper investigation." "So you are continuing to violate state law?" David asked. Sharon turned and walked away without answering, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement. Marcus followed her, but not before shooting me an apologetic look that suggested he had not been fully informed about what Sharon was doing. The story aired that evening on the 5 o'clock news. I watched it with Emma, who could not believe she was on television. David had done an excellent job, presenting the facts clearly, showing Emma's adorable hand-painted signs, and including interview clips where Sharon looked increasingly flustered and defensive. The segment ended with David explaining the Arizona lemonade stand law and suggesting that viewers check whether their own HOAs might be violating it. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. First, it was my mom in Tucson, who had seen the news and wanted to make sure we were okay. Then it was old friends I had not talked to in years. By 7 p.m., my social media accounts were blowing up. Someone had shared the news story on Twitter, and it was spreading rapidly. By Wednesday morning, the story had been picked up by other local news stations. I woke up to find 3 different news vans parked on our street. Emma was thrilled by all the attention, but I was starting to feel overwhelmed. I called David from Channel 7 to ask for advice. "This is bigger than I expected," he admitted. "The story has resonated with people. Everyone has an HOA horror story, and the image of an 8-year-old just wanting to buy a bike is really powerful. My advice is to control the narrative. Don't talk to anyone you don't want to, but maybe consider doing 1 or 2 more interviews with outlets you trust." I agreed to do a follow-up interview with Channel 7 and one with a local newspaper, the Arizona Republic. Both wanted to focus on the broader issue of HOA overreach, using our story as an example. The newspaper reporter, a woman named Margaret Foster, was particularly interested in the legal aspects. "Arizona has some of the strongest HOA regulations in the country," Margaret explained as we sat in my living room Wednesday afternoon. "There are about 8,000 HOAs in the state, governing roughly 2 million residents. And while the lemonade stand law is pretty clear, enforcement can be tricky. Most people don't want to fight their HOA because it is expensive and time-consuming. I did not ask for this fight, I said honestly. I just wanted my daughter to have a normal childhood experience. That's what makes your story compelling, Margaret said. You are not some activist with an agenda. You are just a dad protecting his kid. The newspaper article came out Thursday morning, and it was even more detailed than the TV segment. Margaret had interviewed several legal experts who all agreed that the HOA had violated state law. She had also dug into Desert Bloom Estate's history and discovered that Sharon had been HOA president for 7 years and had a reputation for aggressive enforcement of minor violations. One anonymous source described her as the kind of person who measures grass height with a ruler and reports people for having their garbage cans visible from the street 30 seconds past collection time. That afternoon, I got a certified letter from the HOA. My hands shook as I opened it, expecting it to be the formal $500 per day fine. Instead, it was a notice for an emergency board meeting scheduled for Friday evening to discuss recent events and review association policies regarding temporary youth activities. I showed up to that meeting at 7 p.m. Friday, walking into the community clubhouse with a folder full of printed Arizona statutes and news articles. The room was packed. Usually, HOA meetings drew maybe 10 residents. Tonight, there were at least 60 people crammed into a space designed for 30. Sharon sat at the head table with the other 4 board members, looking like she had not slept in days. Her signature visor was gone, and her hair was not as perfectly styled as usual. The other board members included Marcus Chen, who I had seen briefly on Tuesday, Patricia Donnelly, a woman in her 70s with bright red lipstick, Robert Sullivan, a middle-aged corporate type in a business suit despite it being a casual Friday evening meeting, and Deanna Morrison, a younger woman maybe in her 30s who kept glancing nervously at the crowd. This emergency meeting of the Desert Bloom Estate's Homeowner Association Board is now in session, Sharon said, banging a small gavel that seemed ridiculous given the circumstances. We are here to address the recent media attention regarding the enforcement of Covenant Section 12.4. You mean the recent illegal actions by the HOA? Someone shouted from the back. I turned and saw Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman who had bought Emma's lemonade 3 times on Saturday. Sharon's jaw tightened. All actions taken by this board have been in accordance with the signed covenants that every homeowner agreed to upon purchase of their property. Except you violated state law, I said, standing up. Arizona Revised Statute Section 33-1808 specifically protects children's lemonade stands from prohibition by HOAs. You threatened to fine me $500 a day for allowing my 8-year-old daughter to exercise her legal rights. The room erupted in murmurs and conversations. Marcus Chen leaned over and whispered something to Sharon, who shook her head firmly. The board was acting on information available at the time, Sharon said. We were not aware of the specific statute you are referencing. How can you enforce HOA rules if you do not even know the laws that supersede them? Another resident called out. This was getting heated quickly. Order, Sharon banged her gavel again. We will have order in this meeting or I will clear the room. Actually, Sharon, you can't do that, Robert Sullivan said, speaking for the first time. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. These are open meetings per Arizona HOA regulations. Residents have a right to be here and to speak during the comment period. Sharon shot him a look that could have melted steel. I am aware of meeting procedures, Robert. Then maybe we should move to the agenda item, Deanna Morrison suggested softly. I think we should discuss rescinding the violation notice against Mr. Xavier and his daughter. I second that motion, Marcus said immediately. Sharon looked like she had been slapped. We have not even discussed this as a board yet. This is highly irregular. What's irregular is threatening a little girl's lemonade stand, Patricia Donnelly said, surprising everyone. She had been Sharon's ally on the board for years, according to the neighborhood gossip. I have gotten 43 phone calls since Tuesday from residents, from my own children, from people at my church. Everyone wants to know why we are bullying a child. We are not bullying anyone, Sharon insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. We are enforcing the rules that maintain our property values. I move that we immediately rescind any and all violations issued to Xander Xavier regarding his daughter's lemonade stand, Marcus said formally. And I further move that we amend our covenants to explicitly allow temporary youth-operated beverage stands that comply with state law. I second both motions, Robert Sullivan said. Sharon had lost control of her board, and everyone in the room could see it. We need to discuss this properly, review the legal implications. All in favor of rescinding the violations? Marcus asked, ignoring Sharon completely. 4 hands went up: Marcus, Robert, Deanna, and even Patricia. Sharon sat with her arms crossed, not voting. Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention, Marcus said. All in favor of amending the covenants to allow youth lemonade stands? Again, 4 hands. Sharon remained motionless, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Motion carries, Marcus announced. Mr. Xavier, on behalf of the board, I apologize for the distress this situation has caused you and your daughter. The room broke into applause. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I had not even realized I was carrying. But I was not done yet. I appreciate that, I said, standing again. But I want to address something else. Sharon, you told me that the fine for violations was $500 per day. When I reviewed the actual covenant documents, the fine schedule lists a maximum of $100 per day for any violation, and that's only after a formal hearing process. You lied to me and attempted to intimidate me with threats of illegal fines. The room went silent. Sharon's face drained of color. That was a communication error, she said weakly. It was a deliberate attempt to bully me into compliance through false threats, I said, and I want to know how many other residents you have done this to. The murmurs in the room grew louder. Several people were nodding, and a few raised their hands like they wanted to speak. I think Mr. Xavier raises a valid concern, Robert Sullivan said. I move that we conduct an audit of all violations issued in the past 12 months to ensure they comply with our actual covenant language and state law. Seconded, Deanna Morrison said immediately. This is a witch hunt, Sharon said, standing up abruptly. I have served this community faithfully for 7 years, and this is how you treat me. Because of some manufactured media controversy. Sharon, please sit down, Patricia Donnelly said gently. Nobody is attacking you. We just need to make sure everything has been done properly. I resign, Sharon announced suddenly. Effective immediately. You can audit whatever you want without me. She grabbed her purse and walked out of the clubhouse, leaving her gavel and clipboard on the table. The room sat in stunned silence for a moment. Then Marcus Chen cleared his throat. Well, I suppose we need to elect a new president, he said. But first, let's finish the audit motion. All in favor? 4 hands went up unanimously. The meeting continued for another hour, with residents sharing their own stories of questionable HOA enforcement. One couple had been fined for having their garbage cans visible from the street, even though collection day was a Tuesday, and they had put the cans out Monday night per the city schedule. Another resident had been cited for having unapproved flowers in her front garden. only to discover that the specific flowers were not actually mentioned anywhere in the covenant documents. Story after story revealed a pattern of Sharon using her position to intimidate and control residents through threats and questionable interpretations of rules. By the time I left that meeting at 9:30 p.m., the board had voted to conduct a comprehensive review of all HOA practices and had scheduled a special election for a new president. Several residents approached me to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Sharon. "You did what a lot of us were too scared to do," one man told me. "She has been making life miserable for people for years." I drove home feeling vindicated but also exhausted. Emma was staying with my mom for the weekend, so I had the house to myself. I poured a whiskey and sat on the back patio, watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. My phone buzzed with a text from David Chen, the reporter. "Story is going national. Good Morning America wants to interview you and Emma. Interested?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no, to just let this all die down and return to normal life. But another part of me thought about all those residents at the meeting tonight, all those people who had been intimidated and bullied by someone abusing a small amount of power. If our story could help other people stand up to similar situations, maybe it was worth the attention. I texted back, "Let me talk to Emma and see if she is comfortable with it." Saturday morning, I drove to Tucson to pick up Emma from my mom's house. On the way, I listened to the radio and was shocked to hear a talk show host discussing our story. The host was taking calls from listeners about their own HOA experiences, and the stories ranged from mildly annoying to absolutely insane. One woman called in to describe how her HOA had fined her $3,000 for painting her front door the wrong shade of blue, even though she had used the color that was listed in the approved palette. When she proved she had used the correct color, they told her the palette had been updated the previous month and she should have checked before painting. My mom met me at the door with a huge hug. "My grandson is famous," she exclaimed, then caught herself. "I mean my granddaughter." "Emma is famous. You know what I mean." Emma came running from the backyard where she had been playing with my mom's dog. "Dad, Grandma showed me all the videos online. There are so many people talking about my lemonade stand." We sat down in my mom's living room and I explained the Good Morning America request. Emma's eyes went wide. "That is like actually famous," she said. "Can I really be on there?" "Only if you want to," I said. "It is okay to say no. This has all been a lot, and I understand if you just want things to go back to normal." Emma thought about it for a moment, her face serious in that way kids get when they are trying to make a grown-up decision. "I think we should do it," she said finally. "Because maybe it will help other kids who want to have lemonade stands." My heart swelled with pride. "Okay then, we will do it." I texted David back with our agreement, and he helped coordinate with the Good Morning America producers. They wanted to do a live remote interview Monday morning, which meant a satellite truck would be at our house at 5 a.m. Arizona time to set up. Sunday was relatively quiet. I spent the day with Emma, helping her make new signs for her lemonade stand. She wanted everything to look perfect for the national TV appearance. We went to a craft store and bought better markers, glitter, and colorful poster board. Emma spent hours creating signs that said Emma's famous lemonade, as seen on TV, and supporting kids' rights 50 cents. That evening we practiced potential interview questions. Emma was nervous but excited. I was just nervous. "What if I say something stupid?" she asked. "You are 8 years old," I said. "You are allowed to say whatever you want. Just be yourself and it will be perfect." Monday morning came too early. The satellite truck arrived at 4:30 a.m., and technicians began setting up equipment in our front yard while Emma and I got ready inside. A producer named Rebecca walked me through the process, explaining that we would be doing a live shot during the 7:30 segment, and that the hosts, Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos, would be asking us questions from the New York studio. Emma's lemonade stand was set up on the lawn, looking absolutely adorable in the early morning light. The technicians had brought in extra lighting to make everything look perfect. Emma wore her favorite blue dress and had insisted on putting her hair in pigtails. At exactly 7:30 Arizona time, 9:30 Eastern, we went live. I could hear Robin Roberts' voice through an earpiece they had given me. "Now we have a story that has captured the hearts of millions online," Robin said. An 8-year-old girl's lemonade stand was shut down by her homeowner association, but the family fought back. Joining us now from Scottsdale, Arizona, are Xander Xavier and his daughter Emma. "Good morning to you both." "Good morning," Emma said shyly, giving a little wave to the camera. The interview lasted about 6 minutes, though it felt both longer and shorter than that. Robin and George asked Emma about why she wanted to sell lemonade, about her dream of buying a new bicycle, and about how she felt when the HOA told her to stop. Emma answered everything honestly and sweetly, explaining that she just wanted to earn money like a big kid, and that she did not understand why selling lemonade was bad. They asked me about the HOA's threats and the subsequent board meeting. I kept my answers measured and focused on the broader issue of HOA overreach rather than personal attacks on Sharon. "What would you say to other families dealing with similar situations?" George asked. "Know your rights," I said. "Research your local laws and your HOA covenants." A lot of times, HOAs rely on intimidation and the assumption that people won't push back. But if they are wrong, you have every right to stand up for yourself and your family. The interview ended with Robin announcing that they had received word from our HOA that they were dropping all violations and had amended their rules to explicitly allow children's lemonade stands. Emma beamed at the camera. As soon as we were off air, my phone exploded. Text messages, social media notifications, and calls poured in from everyone I had ever known. The story was everywhere. CNN, Fox News, local news stations across the country, and countless websites and blogs. By noon, we had been contacted by 4 different lawyers offering to represent us pro bono if we wanted to sue the HOA for harassment. A bicycle company in Colorado sent an email offering to give Emma any bike in their catalog for free. A lemonade company wanted to send us supplies and sponsor a neighborhood lemonade stand party. It was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from Marcus Chen, who had been elected as the new HOA president in Sharon's absence. "Xander, I wanted to update you on the audit we are conducting," he said. "And to be honest, we have found some serious problems." "How serious?" I asked. "Serious enough that we have contacted a lawyer," Marcus said. "It appears that Sharon may have been collecting fines that were never properly authorized by the board. We are still going through the records, but there is roughly $40,000 in fines collected over the past 3 years that do not match up with board meeting minutes or proper documentation." My stomach dropped. "You think she stole from the HOA?" "We do not know yet," Marcus said carefully. "It could be incompetence or poor record keeping, but it needs to be investigated properly. I wanted to give you a heads up because this might become public, and given all the media attention, reporters might reach out to you for comment." "I appreciate that," I said. "Let me know if there is anything I can do to help." The story about the missing HOA funds broke on Thursday. Channel 7 News was the first to report it, with David Chen once again covering the story. The report detailed how the audit had uncovered discrepancies in financial records, with dozens of fines collected from residents that were not properly documented or authorized. Sharon Winters was interviewed briefly, standing in her driveway and refusing to answer most questions. "This is a private matter being handled by the appropriate parties," she said tersely. "I have done nothing wrong, and any suggestion otherwise is defamatory." But the evidence was mounting. The HOA board held another emergency meeting and voted unanimously to turn their findings over to local police for investigation. By Friday afternoon, detectives from the Scottsdale Police Department had obtained a warrant for Sharon's financial records. I tried to stay out of it, focusing on Emma and returning to some sense of normalcy. Emma's lemonade stand became a weekend fixture in our neighborhood, and she was making more money than she had ever imagined possible. Neighbors stopped by not just for lemonade but to chat and thank us for standing up to the HOA. Mrs. Peterson came by every Saturday and Sunday without fail, always paying $5 for a 50-cent cup. The bicycle company in Colorado made good on their offer, sending Emma a beautiful blue bike with a white basket and a card that read, "For the most famous lemonade seller in America." Emma cried when she saw it, and I maybe teared up a little too. 2 weeks after the Good Morning America appearance, I got a call from a producer at a national talk show. They wanted to do a segment on HOA reform and wanted Emma and me to be part of a panel discussion. I politely declined. We had made our point, and I felt like we had done enough. Emma just wanted to sell lemonade and ride her new bike, not be a professional activist. In early July, the Scottsdale Police Department held a press conference announcing that Sharon Winters had been arrested and charged with theft and fraud. The investigation had revealed that she had been systematically overcharging residents for violations, collecting fines that exceeded the covenant-authorized amounts, and pocketing the difference. Over a 4-year period, she had stolen approximately $63,000 from the HOA's operating funds. The news coverage was intense, but brief. Our story had moved from heartwarming tale of standing up to bureaucracy to a more serious criminal matter. I gave one statement to David Chen at Channel 7, expressing disappointment that someone in a position of trust had abused that power. And then I stopped talking to reporters. The legal process moved slowly. Sharon hired a lawyer and pleaded not guilty, claiming that any financial discrepancies were the result of accounting errors, not intentional theft. The HOA board, now led by Marcus Chen with Diana Morrison as vice president, hired a forensic accountant to document all the fraudulent charges. Several residents, including myself, were contacted by the district attorney's office and asked to provide statements about our interactions with Sharon. I described the $500 per day fine threat, provided copies of all our communications, and explained how her aggressive tactics had intimidated me into almost backing down. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Jennifer Martinez, told me that my case was particularly important because it showed Sharon's pattern of using inflated fine threats to coerce compliance. The trial was scheduled for October, but in September, Sharon's lawyer negotiated a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of theft and 1 count of fraudulent schemes, agreeing to pay full restitution to the HOA and accept a sentence of 3 years probation with 6 months home detention. She would also have to perform 300 hours of community service and was permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. The day the plea deal was announced, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to see her face real jail time for what she had done. but another part of me just felt sad that someone had let power go to their heads so completely that they had destroyed their own life over HOA fines. Emma, in her 8-year-old wisdom, summed it up best. I think she was just a mean person who forgot how to be nice. By October, life had mostly returned to normal. Emma's lemonade stand was still popular on weekends, though the crowds had died down considerably from the peak of media attention. She had saved up enough money to buy a new video game system and was now saving for something else, though she kept changing her mind about what. The HOA, under Marcus's leadership, had become a much more reasonable organization. They simplified the covenant documents, removing outdated and overly restrictive rules. They established a clear appeals process for violations and created a community newsletter to improve communication with residents. There was even talk of organizing a neighborhood block party, something that had never happened under Sharon's reign. I was elected to the HOA board in November, running unopposed for one of the open seats. I never thought I would voluntarily join an HOA board, but after everything that had happened, I felt a responsibility to help make sure it was run properly. My main focus was on keeping rules reasonable and enforcement fair. The story did not completely fade away. Every few months, some blog or website would reshare the original news segment, and I would get a new wave of social media messages. People sent Emma letters and cards, most including $1 or $2 for her lemonade stand. We donated most of that money to a local children's charity, keeping just enough to fund Emma's weekend lemonade operations. David Chen from Channel 7 won an Emmy Award for his coverage of consumer advocacy stories, with our lemonade stand story being prominently featured in his submission reel. He sent Emma a photo of himself holding the trophy with a note thanking her for being the most professional 8-year-old interview subject he had ever worked with. The bicycle company that had sent Emma her bike invited us to visit their factory in Denver in December. We made it a weekend trip, and Emma got to see how bicycles were manufactured and even got to help assemble one that they donated to a local children's program. It was a magical experience for her, and I was grateful that something so positive had come from what started as such a frustrating situation. As the year came to a close, I found myself reflecting on how a simple lemonade stand had changed our lives. Emma was more confident, having learned that standing up for what is right matters even when it is scary. I had learned that sometimes you have to fight battles you never wanted, and that communities can come together when someone is willing to take the first step. Our neighborhood felt different too. People were more engaged, attending HOA meetings and actually reading the newsletters. There was a sense of community that had not existed before, forged through the shared experience of watching one family stand up to an abusive authority figure and win. Emma's lemonade stand became something of a neighborhood institution. On warm weekends, kids from other houses started setting up their own stands, cookie stands, friendship bracelet stands, even a stand selling hand-drawn artwork. The community area near the clubhouse became a little marketplace where kids could be entrepreneurs and neighbors could support them. One Saturday in late December, when the Arizona weather was a perfect 70 degrees, Emma was at her stand when a familiar car pulled up. An elderly woman I did not recognize got out and walked over, leaning heavily on a cane. "Are you Emma?" the woman asked. "Yes, madam," Emma replied politely, the way I had taught her. "I drove all the way from Mesa to buy a cup of your lemonade," the woman said, pulling out a $5 bill. "My HOA was trying to fine my grandson for having a garage sale. I saw your story on the news and showed them the video. They backed down immediately. You helped us, sweetie. Thank you." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she carefully poured a cup of lemonade and handed it to the woman. "Thank you for telling me that," Emma said softly. I watched from the porch, my own eyes getting misty. This was what it was all about. Not the news coverage or the national attention, but the real impact on real people's lives. As the sun set that evening, Emma counted her money for the day. $23, a new record for December. She was saving up for Christmas presents now, wanting to buy gifts for her friends and family. "Dad," she said as we carried the stand back to the garage, "do you think Mrs. Winters ever feels bad about what she did?" I thought about how to answer that. "I do not know, sweetie. I hope so. I hope she learned something from all this." "I hope she did too," Emma said, "because everyone should get a second chance to be better." The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze me. In January, I got an unexpected piece of mail. It was a handwritten letter with no return address. Inside, on plain stationery, was a brief note. "Mr. Xavier, I owe you and your daughter an apology. I let my position go to my head and forgot that rules should serve people, not the other way around. What I did was wrong, and I am sorry for the pain I caused your family. I hope Emma enjoys her bicycle. SW." I read the letter 3 times, surprised by the genuine contrition in the words. I showed it to Emma, who read it carefully. "Should we write back?" she asked. "I do not have her address," I said, "but I think the fact that she wrote it is what matters." Emma nodded slowly. "I forgive her," she announced, "because holding grudges makes your heart tired." I had no idea where she had heard that phrase, but it was perfect. Life continued its forward momentum. Emma finished 3rd grade with excellent grades and was chosen for the school's gifted program. Her lemonade stand continued through the spring and into another summer, though it was no longer about the money. It had become a social event, a place where neighbors gathered and kids played and community happened. The criminal case against Sharon concluded with her completing her 6 months of home detention and beginning her community service. I heard through the neighborhood gossip that she had moved to a different part of Scottsdale and was working as a bookkeeper, keeping a low profile. The HOA board that I now served on implemented new policies requiring annual financial audits by independent accountants and term limits for all board positions. We wanted to make sure that no one person could ever accumulate that much unchecked power again. In June, exactly 1 year after the original incident, Channel 7 News did a follow-up story. David Chen came back to our house, filmed Emma at her now famous lemonade stand, and interviewed us about how life had changed. "Looking back, do you have any regrets?" David asked me. "Not one," I said honestly. "This whole experience taught Emma and me that you have to stand up for what is right, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard." "And Emma, what have you learned?" David asked, turning the microphone to my daughter. Emma thought for a moment, then said, "I learned that even kids can make a difference, and that lemonade tastes better when you make it yourself, and that my dad is really brave." The follow-up story aired that evening, a nice bookend to the whole saga. It focused less on the drama and more on the positive changes that had resulted. The reformed HOA, the neighborhood's renewed sense of community, and Emma's continued entrepreneurial success. As summer rolled on, I found myself grateful for the strange journey we had been on. What started as a frustrating encounter with an overzealous HOA president had transformed into a lesson about courage, community, and the importance of standing up for what is right. Emma's lemonade stand continued to operate most weekends, no longer making headlines but still making a difference in small ways. She had saved enough money to buy Christmas presents, a new bookshelf for her room, and had started a savings account for college. More importantly, She had learned valuable lessons about business, perseverance, and justice. The neighborhood had changed too. People were friendlier, more engaged, and more willing to look out for each other. The monthly HOA meetings had become genuine community gatherings, where neighbors discussed not just rules and violations, but also ideas for improvement and opportunities to help each other. One warm evening in July, I was sitting on my porch watching Emma serve lemonade to a group of neighborhood kids when Marcus Chen walked over. "You know, when you first stood up to Sharon, I thought you were crazy," Marcus said, settling into the chair next to me. "I thought you were going to make everything worse, create division in the neighborhood." "And now?" I asked. "Now I think you saved this community," he said simply. "Before all this happened, people were scared of the HOA. They saw it as this oppressive force to be avoided. Now people actually want to participate. We have more volunteers than we know what to do with. That is because of you and Emma." "It is because Sharon finally pushed too far," I corrected. "We just happened to be the ones who pushed back." "Maybe," Marcus conceded. "But a lot of people would have just backed down, paid the fine, and moved on. You fought. That matters." As the sun set over Desert Bloom Estates that evening, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, I reflected on the unexpected turns life can take. A year ago, I was just a divorced dad trying to give his daughter a normal childhood experience. Now we were local celebrities, accidental activists, and examples of how standing up to injustice can create real change. Emma finished serving her last customers of the day and started packing up her stand. She had made $37, mostly in singles and quarters. As she carefully counted the money into her cash box, she looked up at me with a huge smile. "Same time next week?" she asked. "Same time next week," I confirmed, "because some traditions are worth keeping, especially the ones you have to fight for." The story of Emma's lemonade stand and our battle with the HOA became part of our neighborhood's history. A reminder that even the smallest voices deserve to be heard, and that communities work best when people look out for each other, instead of just enforcing rules. As we walked back to the house that evening, Emma slipped her hand into mine. "Thanks for not making me stop, Dad," she said quietly. "Thanks for wanting to do it in the first place," I replied. "You started something really special, kiddo," and she had. What began as a simple lemonade stand had become a movement, a lesson, and a legacy. Not bad for 50 cents a cup.